personal branding isn't engineering a fake version of yourself. What it is exploring all of the things about you, and you're a different person to different people. With my skin color changing, it was a very pivotal moment. Me writing about those stories and not even focusing on my agency actually won me more business. There's other ways of creating content rather than just creating original content. Commenting and engaging with people is also content. How many times have you flicked through your feed and you think, same shit, and people copying each other? So when you do something a little bit different, then it's going to stand out.
3 to 5 tips when it comes to creating content that really resonates with your target audience on LinkedIn.
I think
today I'm talking to Ash Rathod, who specialises in helping businesses to attract their ideal clients, keep them for longer, and get them paying more using the power of storytelling. Ash has almost 70,000 followers on LinkedIn. He's a LinkedIn course creator, and he also has run an agency for more than 15 years. Ash's story is really interesting and really unique. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the pivotal moment he realized that his own personal story had incredible power, and how you can use your personal story to attract better, higher paying clients. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share it with a friend. Ash, your profile on LinkedIn says storytelling for business and life. Why is storytelling so important, and why does everybody seem to be pretty obsessed with it at the moment?
You know what? You're the first person that has ever noticed that on my image banner. People know me for the storyteller, and storytelling is this big word, and it's quite subjective, isn't it? And there's loads of little parts within storytelling. It could be storytelling for whatever. It's like brand and branding. Like you ask one person what this word means and they'll tell you something, and then ask another 10 people and it's completely different.
Different definition, yeah.
So the two things that I focus on is business, but also personal branding as well. And I think they can be independent and they can be exclusive, but they can also work together. So yeah, I put that down as for business and life, and appreciate you noticing that, man.
Yeah, what do you think is the line between business and life? Because I know a lot of people feel like they have to have almost an alternate persona for their clients than they do to maybe their friends and family. What's your sort of opinion on that?
I honestly don't think there's a fine line. I think generally, whether it's business or individuals and personal, you're still, at the end of the day, whatever you're doing, you're dealing with a person at the end of that, right? So I had another conversation with someone about how branding generally, how does it work in terms of branding for B2C and B2B? And we were talking about everything should be customer centric, and so people focused. And so if that's the case, you've got to always find the person behind the business as well, because that's who you're dealing with. So I think when you're dealing with a business, you're dealing with a person. So I think it's important for that person on the other end, whether it's a founder or a marketer, it's important that people know you for who you are before you get started on any other work.
Yeah. One of my mentors once said to me, there is no B2C or B2B. There's only H to H, human to human. I find that interesting. I know quite a few of people listening to this podcast will be dealing with bigger businesses. And we had an episode a couple of weeks ago about how to land these kind of big corporate clients. What's your thoughts on storytelling in relation to a business that has lots of levels and lots of different people? Let's say I run a creative studio and I'm trying to get Nike as a client. Do I try and make my story resonate with, the VP of product at Nike, or do I try and make it resonate with the marketing manager, or doesn't it matter? Like, how do I go through that process of knowing which parts of my story are relevant when there's so many people involved in that kind of decision-making process?
I think it's important to shine a light on your personal philosophy and your values as a person, because at the end of the day, that's who they're going to be dealing with. So when I coach and mentor people with regards to their content, this comes up quite a bit. What should I write about? Should it be about my business and what's more pertinent to them? Or should I write about me? And I say, look, personal branding isn't engineering a fake version of yourself. What it is exploring all of the things about you. And you're a different person to different people, right? I'm a different person to my wife, to who I am for my mom or my daughter or my best mate. It doesn't mean that I'm a fake version, because I have multiple versions of myself. We're so layered, right? So what I say with regards to your content online is explore all of those things, but then whittle down those points that you want to shine a light on that will also be or appeal or resonate with your clients. So values such as integrity, transparency, honesty, there's certain human wider themes that people will resonate with, but it's the things that are real to you when you possess those qualities, but you want to shine a light on them. The danger is that you start talking about anything and everything. And when you start doing that, you start diluting who you are and your messaging. So I have this thing called your niche content and your general content. And your general content is really that kind of shining a light on your values, your personal philosophy. And what's funny is actually we had a client, he sells recycling boxes and they do really well. They have massive clients like Yo Valley and companies like Amazon and, big retailers. And he was going for a meeting and he wrote a personal story on LinkedIn. And he went to that meeting and the decision maker mentioned that about him first and said, why you've got this meeting is because I really like you as a person. Like, obviously, the thing that you do and your business and everything that you do is what we need, but I'd rather deal with someone that I know really well than someone that I just don't get on with. And that might be an exception, as in someone calling that out in a meeting, but I think we generally do, even if it's subconscious, we think like that. If I didn't know you, Matt, as a person, and I didn't know what you were like or our values weren't aligned, then there's that extra layer of decision making that I have to go through. I'd rather, but the right side of the brain, just do the decision making for me. Like we generally human beings want easy things. Like I read somewhere in a book, actually, you wake up in the morning, and by the time you wake up in the morning, brush your teeth and get out of the house, you're making a lot of decisions in that day, but you're not subconsciously doing it. You're just doing it as a natural habit. And that's the whole thing. It's like when you kind of create content and that builds kind of these memory structures and associations with someone, they already kind of know you. And that's magic, I think. It really is powerful.
Yeah. And I think we've all experienced it, right? I mean, even if you just take it to like a celebrity level, I'm listening to this podcast at the moment by a guy called Chris Williamson called Modern Wisdom. And he's a Geordie guy. I don't know if he was originally born there, but he went to uni there. He was a club promoter. And he talks about all this stuff in the UK, which is like very much UK culture and his beliefs. And he's talking about this journey he's going through with therapy. And like, I feel as if I know the dude. And I feel like if I just met him at a party, I already know that we would get on. And it's quite a weird concept because he's never met me. So it's like my brain starts to build those associations. The question I've got for you is, how do we know where that line is between this is too personal or irrelevant and this is actually going to be something that my ideal clients value?
I think the trick here for me has always been like, if you're overthinking it, then it's already becoming uncomfortable. I think never put content out there that you're uncomfortable with. But the fine line, I don't know. I don't ever try restricting people. I do say just have a think about what's important to you. And if it's important to the people out there, then you'll attract the right type of people. And that's kind of a half answer, I know. But the reason why I don't like restricting people in terms of what they put out there, especially when it's shining a light on their values, and what's important to them is because that's exactly it. It's what's important to them. I don't like putting restrictions in place, but I do give them kind of, when I'm teaching, I do give them kind of guardrails. A simple exercise for me is this, and it's very simple, is that list a load of things that represent you. So they could be words, they could be personality traits, they can be sayings. Like one of my sayings is live and let live. That is always in my content, like, and also my actions as well. I try not to get in online disputes with people. I never try saying you're right or you wrong. And I think the way you act and the way you behave in person, but also online, says a lot about you as well. So going back to that list is that I know that's going to be important to people out there, or the type of people that I want to work with and deal with. So I'll write more of those stories. I try staying away from just real kind of deep trauma. I say that as well, but I say that hesitantly or reluctantly. But sometimes there's stories that go out there and it just doesn't help you or the person out there. And I'm just thinking, what is that? Why has that been written? And people will question that. Is it just for attention? And that has a negative impact on your audience as well.
Yeah, it seems like the key is being able to link that personal thing to either something you do. So it's like your personal story and your business story and how they overlap, or in some way that you believe is going to help somebody. So one of the things that springs to my mind, I don't know if you know Mark LaRouche. He's a friend of mine. And he does a lot about storytelling. One of his clients, I remember he always shares this story with me where she opened up about her, I think it was father or brother who committed suicide. And she kind of told this story, and she went on to tell this story, and it was so emotive that she got asked to do a TED Talk about it. And that TED Talk then led to her building a company about male suicide prevention. And, you know, it's like a beautiful story in and of itself. But obviously that has a lot of impact on other people who are currently dealing with those things, and it might save someone's life. It might help. So there's like a bigger thing behind it. Whereas I think a lot of the stuff that maybe you're referencing is more like, this person's told me about the time I got bullied in 5th grade, and, you know, I wet myself in front of the class and blah, blah, blah. And then like, that's the end of the story. And you're kind of like, right. All right, why did you tell me that?
Yeah, it's a great example with your friend as well, because that says also a lot about her character. So it's not just a story for a story's sake. It says a lot about her character. And also something like that is authentic. Like, I know that's a buzzword, but it is real. I think people can sniff the bullshit from the truth easily in real life, but also online, because there's so much bullshit online as well. And even the thing is, even if it's true and that story doesn't relate to or resonate with someone, it helped her to kind of tell her story and become more confident. And it's kind of how I started online on LinkedIn initially. I didn't really use LinkedIn that much anyway, apart from talking about the very few awards that my agency had, but I never used it as a platform. Then I don't know whether I've told this story to you personally. I might have told it a few times, but with my skin color changing, it was a very pivotal moment for me in terms of how it was affecting me personally and my business. And this was way before COVID, and a lot of my clients were abroad. So I had clients in America, EMEA, and parts of Asia. So a lot of my meetings were done online and on video as well. So as soon as my dark skin started changing, it slowly started happening. I obviously noticed it, and I started making excuses not to go on camera. So I'd switch off the camera and I'd email and say, oh yeah, my tech's not working, my camera's not working or whatever. And then my client said, look, there's something wrong. Is everything all right? And I told her by email, and she was so supportive. She was really, really nice about it. Just say, look, just do your thing. And then I actually wrote about that later on. And I wrote that post on LinkedIn, and I kind of just talked about how that client helped me. So it was still work related, but also how my personal event was affecting my work. And that works really well on LinkedIn. In hindsight, I didn't have any agenda in other than that. I just wanted to talk about it. And I didn't want to talk to a professional because my wife also noticed the changes with me, and she said, you need to speak to someone. And I wish I kind of did at that time, but I'm that type of a person that I feel like if I talk about something that's annoying me, it'll just make the problem bigger.
Okay.
People might agree or disagree with that, but that's the way I saw it. But what I did do was I thought I do need to do something, and I just wrote about it on LinkedIn, and the kind of rest is history. But in the moment, at that time, I was like, flipping heck, what have I done?
Yeah.
Like, you just made a big mistake there. Like, your client's on there. This is a professional website. You've never written anything like that. What people are going to think of you, what people are going to think of your business. But all of those fears and the stories I was telling myself, it was just the complete opposite.
Yeah, it's so interesting. You said something before. You said, I wouldn't advise people to put anything out that really makes them uncomfortable. But I imagine writing about that and having to acknowledge publicly that there was this change happening in the color of your skin must have been quite uncomfortable.
Yeah, but what's weird is when I was actually writing it, I was actually feeling really comfortable about it. So let's go back to that when I say I would advise you not to write something that's uncomfortable. So if someone tells you to write about something that you've not really spoken to anyone about and you should do it and you're reluctant to do it, but you do it anyway for the wrong reasons, and that's just to get a visibility and that's just to get kind of those likes and comments, then I think that's the wrong way to go about it. But if you're actually comfortable talking about that or on that fine line where, you're doing it for other reasons than just the likes and the comments and stuff, then I think go ahead. I think, writing can be therapeutic. So even if you're writing online, even if it is for you, sometimes it's all right.
Yeah, it sounds like it's about intention, right?
Absolutely, yeah. But then there's that fine line, isn't there? It's like, yeah, but I want to build my personal brand for more business. So shall I write about all of these things just so people like me and just for my business? And I think that's the gray area. I think that's for me anyway.
Yeah. And I think there's a different approach that you can take there, because if you're going to go that far, you might as well go down the direct marketing line where you are literally promoting the products and services that you do and maybe using some case studies and some stories. Like, I think if the intention is just to get clients or just to get engagement, there's very specific ways to do that. Whereas if the intention is to build relationships and be vulnerable and put yourself out there more, then that's probably not the right thing to do, because it's going to feel a bit like a bait and switch. And I think, like you said, people are going to see it and they're going to know that that's just been written to try and evoke some kind of response from people, rather than because it's important to you and because it's something you feel like is valuable sharing.
Yeah, you said it succinctly there. It's just exactly that. And I think it's important to note as well, like, I think storytelling is about emotion. And I think it's that word emotion that people struggle with. They think you have to trigger emotion and everything has to be contrived and everything has to be, not everything, but some things should be contrived to create emotion, and you kind of embellish things a little bit just so that it is. But the emotions there's a vast array of emotions, isn't there? It's not only sad stories, it's excitement, happy, anger, and all of these things. And I think when you're writing with emotion, I think that's being vulnerable anyway. So you're not just being that clean production side of you that you wish everyone sees. Just put a little bit of those human elements. And brands in advertising do this as well. It's funny how there's been a shift in terms of companies saying that we need to humanize ourselves. And then the opposite happens when it's individuals. We want to do something that's less humanizing, right?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with this report by Binet and Field?
I don't think so, no.
It's called The Long and Short of It.
Okay.
I come from an advertising background, so in TV advertising mainly, or mass media advertising, they did a report and they processed a load of data, and they found that communications that leaned more towards the emotional side of things helped with longer term brand building versus the short-term activation like performance marketing and bumps on seat and direct response like, sign and sales and offers and things like this. But most marketers, what they do, they lean towards the shorter-term activation stuff because that's easily measurable, that appeals to the finance directors, that appeals to, just the bottom line. But the longer term brand building stuff is the emotional led stuff. So to give you an example of what the differences are, direct responses are the things like the offers and the sales and stuff. And the brand communications are the ones that are a little bit more like the Christmas ads you see, like, the John Lewis ads, where they're not really selling anything. They're just putting out associations out there. And the reason why I'm saying that is because we can do that with our content as well. So you can write about content and the emotionally led stuff that builds those associations with people. And it's even better when it's on a personal level because you just become now a little bit more relatable.
Yeah, I think it's harder to do as well, right? I think it's harder to come up with something like that. And I think that's probably why those campaigns are so famous. And now everybody wants to know what the John Lewis campaign this year is going to be. I think it's easy to be like, this is Susan. We helped her increase her ROAS on Facebook from like 6% to 8%. And that generated an X, Y, and Z in sales. And if you want to work with us, you can. I think it's really hard to be like, this is Susan, and like she ran a business and she was frustrated because blah, 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 and start kind of telling this emotive story. For me personally, even though I've written a book, that's not something that comes naturally to me. And I'm curious, how much of your success on LinkedIn do you think is down to the fact that you, as you said to me before we started this podcast, like your most comfortable medium and the thing that you enjoy is writing?
I think a lot of it. And in terms of when I first started, my business was doing all right. I've had an agency for the last 15 years. But that kind of me writing about those stories and not even focusing on Digital Focus, which is my agency, actually won me more business as well, which was weird because then people check you out, people see your profile, people see what you do. Not all of those people are potential clients, but even those people that aren't potential clients, they kind of become ambassadors for you. So the more that they talk to you, the more that they talk to other people about you, it all helps, right? So I think maybe double of my business is probably an exaggeration, but it was close to that. It wasn't.
As in doubled your business from LinkedIn?
Since I started being active on LinkedIn and the way I'm doing LinkedIn, absolutely, yeah.
That's interesting because I know when I come across people on LinkedIn that have got a big following, and your following is big, especially for LinkedIn, I always think, okay, what does that really translate to? I'm just wondering if you can let us in. Like, what's it like having almost 70,000 followers on a platform like LinkedIn and having done LinkedIn learning courses and kind of being known for that?
I think it's all of those things that come afterwards, right? So not all of those followers are going to be potential businesses or business opportunities for me, but it helped. A lot of those people have helped push my message out there. And I also do free stuff. Like I'll get on calls and like I'll help people, I'll help people with their content, even if it's not the type of business that I want, or there's not potential for business. My big why is exactly that. And it was formed after I started creating LinkedIn, after that post that I talked about my skin condition. And it's my big why is basically helping people and businesses share their story and kind of coming out of the shadows. So that relates to obviously businesses like the underdogs that are trying to find a way to get into an industry that is occupied by big businesses, or it might be an individual that just really needs help with their storytelling on their content. And some of the time, the latter, I don't really charge for. I just get on a call with them and just kind of give them a few pointers. But that all of those actions, this is what I mean. So it's not just the content. Your actions have to follow, and going back to that authenticity side of it, like you can't just talk a good game. You've got to actually believe it. You've got to have conviction in yourself in what you do.
Yeah, 100%. What would you say are some of the really tangible things that have come out of building a big following on LinkedIn for you?
So business is one of them. And then you talked about the LinkedIn opportunity. So being invited on podcasts like this, we're sharing audiences now as well by doing this. Then there's the LinkedIn, and then just meeting people with regards to collaborating with people on businesses. And that was a big one for me. So I met a couple of other strategists, and we do a lot of work together now as a collaboration. So that's helped me win or do other businesses or other work that I wouldn't have done if I hadn't put myself out there and I hadn't networked and connected with other people.
These are the guys that you do like the LinkedIn Lives with and the workshops and all of that stuff, right?
Exactly.
And I guess as well, obviously there's a monetary association to that, but I know, having collaborated with people in the past and having my own team, how much of a difference it makes having those relationships and being able to go out and do things with other people versus just being on your own, being a solopreneur. It's actually not that fun.
No. Again, I was having this conversation again, and I'm glad you said that. Like, the progress doesn't have to always be monetized, right? Like, so you can be developing personally, you can be developing relationships, you can be just having conversations and bouncing off people, and these are people that you've never met before as well. And this is all progress. This is all helping you get from point A to point B. And I see that as a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So before you noticed your skin changing color, like, you've had an agency, you said, for 15 years. What stopped you putting content out more and putting yourself out there more before you had that pivotal moment?
I guess I didn't really even think about it. So we were busy creating content for our clients, and it was always, marketing led campaign. So we have a certain campaign, we've got a certain launch, and we'll create content for you, and we use social media for that reason only. And like I said, I only use LinkedIn just to really kind of just keep in contact with old colleagues and friends and stuff. The way it changed for me was exactly that thing. It was by accident. And now, like, in hindsight, I look back at it and think what a powerful and liberating thing it was. And it was that time where I wrote that post and I switched that laptop off, and I just thought, what the hell have I done? I didn't want to open the laptop again. I didn't want to open the LinkedIn app again. And then the next day I had loads of messages, DMs, comments, and these are people that hadn't been suffering exactly what I'd been suffering with regards to the vitiligo, but they related to that because it was themes that stopped them from doing and what they wanted to do, as in putting themselves out there. Imposter syndrome, confidence. And I think the main theme was lean into your weakness, because everyone has these weaknesses or things that you perceive as weaknesses, and they actually are a superpower, versus weaknesses, and it will help you. It's really difficult to say this to someone that hasn't experienced it, and it's almost, it feels like it just has to naturally happen, which is the way it happened for me. You can't force this out of someone, but what you can do is you can almost give them that assurance that it's okay to do that. So if you're thinking about writing about other things that will help you, and you feel that you want other people to know about you, but you don't think it's the right thing to do on a professional platform, then just go for it. I think that's where I kind of help. It's like almost kind of hold their hands and push them over to do what they actually really want to do.
Yeah, and almost like giving people that permission, right? Sometimes that's
permission, exactly.
Yeah, I find a lot of that in coaching as well. It's like people kind of know what to do. They're just looking for somebody to give them the permission to do it. Talk to me about how you think in terms of your skin condition and anything else in your life that maybe makes you a bit self-conscious. How do you turn that into something positive?
I think it's after that post, I've been more confident about doing that. Weirdly enough, I mean, there's a lot of overlapping and maybe a bit of contradiction as well in terms of what I'm about to say now but that first post and that first experience of doing it made me do more of it, but made me also get out of my own head. So I and I give this advice. And again, I don't know if everyone would agree with this, but kind of look at yourself as if you're marketing yourself. So as a marketer, so step outside of your head. And once you detach yourself from those emotions, it's easier to write about them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And the way, just to maybe add on top of this a little bit, the way I've done that and the way that I've found it to be really powerful is anytime I find myself getting self-conscious, I tell myself that I'm being selfish. So in my head, self-conscious and selfish are the same thing.
Way, yeah.
In business, at least, right? It's harder, I think, in your personal life. But if I'm on stage or I'm on a podcast or I'm putting a post out where I know people that I understand are going to read this or hear this or watch this, if I start getting in my head about it, what I'm doing is I'm making my own insecurities more important than helping that person.
Yes.
And for me, that is an act of selfishness. And it allows me just to put those things in the back seat.
Yeah, and you answered your own question there in terms of reframing, and I think that's the best way to look at it. Is it's a disservice to others, like if you're keeping that to yourself. Because one way of looking at it, like self-conscious stuff about personal branding, and don't get me wrong, I went through this as well. I had an allergic reaction to the word personal branding. I thought, how could you go and commoditize yourself? Like that's the only one sacred thing that you have, your personal being, and you want to go and commoditize that and monetize that. But another way of looking at it is just the way that you've explained really well, is that actually the things that I have and my experience and what I know is not me being a know-it-all, and it's not about me, it's about serving others. And if I don't do that, then it contradicts what I'm about, like in terms of my big why. I want to help others, right? And it's a disservice to them if I'm not sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I noticed about your story and your journey is that feedback loop of positivity was very early on in your kind of content creation process. I know there's going to be people listening to this who have tried putting something out there that they think is vulnerable, that they hope might resonate, and they just get crickets. I wonder if you have any thoughts or advice for those people.
You know what? One thing I don't share that often actually is it wasn't exactly I wrote that post. That post did really well. And LinkedIn, or like every social media, is a funny old thing because it's, there's obviously algorithms involved and how many people are connected with you, how many people are on the platform at the same time. And I was quite taken back with that post doing really well. And then straight after, I wrote other posts that weren't personal in any way, and I saw crickets. And then I thought, oh, you know what? Let me emulate that. And I wrote another post, and it wasn't I deleted it straight after. It wasn't that honest. It was just trying to follow a format, and it didn't really do well at all. Again, it bombed. So the point I'm trying to make here is that all of this is not an overnight thing. I use the analogy a lot in that, think about this big, beautiful picture that you want people to know about you. And that picture isn't just a visual thing. I mean, who you are, how you behave, and all of these things. And then try communicate that in little pieces and jigsaw pieces, because you can only build that bigger picture into little pieces. And those pieces happen over time. So I think there's a compounding element to all of this as well. So, I mean, it's hard because especially if you're not great at writing or creating content, you put so much effort in that one piece of content that's taken you so long to do and get past your, own insecurities, and then it bombs and you're like, I think just set the expectations that not every content is going to do well. Like not every piece of content is going to do well. And that's not necessarily because it's shit content or you're a bad content creator. Is just the way it goes. Like it's a long game. And that's the mindset I think you've got to have with a lot of this thing, marketing for business and personal. A lot of it is a long game.
Yeah, absolutely. I came up with I don't know if I came up with it or not, but something clicked in my head the other day when I heard people talking about the long game. And I thought it's fine to play the long game as long as you enjoy playing the game. And I see so many people in the game who are not enjoying playing the game, but in their head then telling themselves, well, it's a long game, it's a long game, it's a long game. I'm going to suffer through this because one day there's going to be some kind of payoff. And for me personally, I just can't do that. I can't do anything for prolonged periods of time that I just don't enjoy in some way. And what I'm kind of observing about this conversation and what you've told me so far, Ash, is although you only started, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago kind of creating this content, it is something that you enjoy doing. You enjoy writing, and you just found something that was worth writing about. I'm just wondering what kind of advice you have for people out there who, and I say people, I specifically mean creative agencies, who the lead marketer or the founder or whatever hears this kind of stuff all the time about the importance of personal branding and the importance of putting yourself out there and building a social media following, but they just don't enjoy writing and they just don't feel like they're very good at it. And they just get that real kind of creative block around it. Like, where do those people go? What do they do?
You know what? There's other ways of creating content rather than just creating original content, right? So, and what I mean by that is commenting and engaging with people is also content. So if you see a bit of content that you resonate with, add your perspective and make sure it is a unique perspective that you add. And it's kind of almost on the sidelines, but people do see that, especially when it's on bigger creators. And I don't mean just target a load of big creators and just spam comment on everything that you see, but start doing that. Like, that's practice, that's content. And you'll sometimes find that your comments, right, will get a lot more reactions than the original post. People will start engaging with you and then turn that into content. So it's like almost practice, like in that sense, on the sidelines, and then maybe upgrade. I don't know whether upgrade is the right word, but
then start creating some of your own
content that way.
Ultimately, what you're suggesting is thinking about it more as a conversation than as like creating content from scratch. And I think that's really, really helpful. What do you think about the idea of, as creatives, we're doing stuff for our clients? Like you mentioned, you were there creating content for your clients, but you weren't really doing it for yourself. What do you think about this idea of, like, if I'm an animator or an illustrator or a photographer or whatever, my content is the medium that I create for my clients? Does that sort of resonate? And like LinkedIn, is it going to give you as much exposure, or is it going to work as well as somebody like yourself who's good at writing and telling stories?
So if you're an animator, your content is basically the work that you do. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but rather than the work that I just do for my clients, it's like I'm going to tell a story or I'm going to share something personal through animation rather than through writing a post. Or if I'm a photographer, I'm going to post a bunch of photos that was a series about, a particular time in my life or something that's significant to me, like the outdoors.
I think that's a great idea as well. And that's the thing with creative people as well. They think outside the box a little bit. And the great thing about that is that kind of stuff will stand out. And how many times have you flicked through your feed and you think, same shit, same shit, and people copying each other. So when you do something a little bit different, then it's going to stand out, right? And if it's speaking to your talents and your expertise, even better, right? Obviously Martin Neumeier's zag, it's like, when everyone zigs, you zag. And that can't be, that's the same for content. That's, do things differently. And especially if it's something that you love doing, then yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I still feel there's a real opportunity gap on LinkedIn because the majority of the content I see really isn't that good. Whereas a lot of other platforms I'm on at the moment, like Instagram, because it's full of creatives, people are putting a hell of a lot of effort into their content creation. And a lot of the time that puts me off because I just think I'm never going to spend that long making a video where I'm pretending to talk to somebody and then it flips to this and then I'm doing a headstand and that's just not me, sort of thing. So the thing I love about LinkedIn is I feel as if there's a real gap in the market right now for unique content, and I think creatives are really well positioned to fill that.
Yeah, and I think you also, like, from a business and marketing point of view, if you put yourself in LinkedIn's shoes, it is still a social media platform, and they are kind of compete. I know they've got a uniqueness that it's a professional social media platform, but they are still competing with the other platforms out there. They want LinkedIn to be sticky. And the reason why it's going to be sticky is to have more content creators keep people on their site. So if you can help LinkedIn, they'll help you as well. And I think it's still around about, it used to be 1 to 3%, but I think it's still around about 3 to 5% of actual active accounts on LinkedIn that are actually creating content. So there's still a huge opportunity for people to do well and to be different in what they put out there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Let's do a little bit of some quick fire stuff. I'd love to know, what are your sort of 3 to 5 tips when it comes to creating content that really resonates with your target audience on LinkedIn?
I think really understand who you are, what you do, and why it matters to them. And that comes from Martin Neumeyer. It's not for personal branding, but it's for branding generally. And so if you unpack that, who you are is obviously you as a person in this context. What you do is your niche, and why it matters is the most important to your audience. We talked about being customer-oriented or audience-oriented. That's so important. And another tip I would say as well, I come from a storytelling mindset, so I'll always look at the end game. Like, what is that end state look like? I call it the power state. So I have a framework, which is the 6P framework, and the end part of that framework is the power state. So, it's the vision. It's like, where do they want to be? Where do the audience want to be? And then you reverse engineer that. Okay, how can you help them get there? The penultimate state is the progress state. It's where you come in and what you do, how you can help them. And we can kind of reverse engineer like all of those states. I can go through all of those states. But what I will do actually, Matt, is if anyone watching this, I've got a course on LinkedIn. And this ain't a shameless plug because I'm not making any money out of that. But if they message me, I'll give them access to it for free, because you have to have a premium subscription to access that LinkedIn learning course. But it's got that framework in there, and hopefully that will help them.
That'd be amazing, man. That's really generous. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
You might just get a shit ton of DMs that you wish that you never had. But okay, we'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile in the comments as well. Dude, it's been awesome chatting to you. One of the things I love is that you are such a genuine person, and every time I've met you in person, you are exactly how you come across online. And my last sort of question to you is, how do we make sure that we maintain that? How do we make sure that we maintain the person or the persona that we put out online and the person that we actually are when people meet us in real life?
The clue there, or the answer, is in the question. I heard a podcast with Joe Rogan and Snoop Dogg, right? I don't know whether you saw that episode, but Joe Rogan basically said to Snoop, man, you've just been really successful. Obviously, you're a talented musician and a rapper, but you've just become really famous and popular just being yourself. And then Snoop Dogg turned around to him and looked at him in a weird way and was like, that's the only thing we're good at doing, being ourselves. It's like, you can be yourself in your sleep. Why do people pretend to be something else? And I think it's like, it's easier to be authentic if you lean into it. It's harder to fake being someone else. Like, you'll always get found out. The wheels will come off. So if you ever feel like this isn't me, then it's for that reason. Like, go back to that original authentic self.
Love that, man. That's such great advice. Dude, where can people find out more about you? Apart from obviously connecting with you on LinkedIn, is there anything else where you want us to direct people?
LinkedIn is the best thing because that's the way where I am active. But if they want to learn a little bit more about me and what I do, then ashrathod.com.
Okay, awesome, man. We will put those links in the show notes. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, Ash. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me, man.
Before you leave, if you found this episode valuable, please hit the subscribe button. Also, if you are a creative business owner doing more than 10K a month and you want to grow and scale without working longer hours or hiring a massive team, then I have something you may be interested in. We have just developed a tool that will give you a custom growth strategy based on exactly where you are in your business right now. So you can stop consuming lots of random content and trying to figure things out on your own and actually get something personalized to you. You will also receive a free copy of my book, and it will point out relevant chapters. If you'd like to take the scorecard, it's totally free. You just have to click the link in the show notes or connect with me on LinkedIn and you will see a link in my bio. Thanks for listening. This is the Creative Courage Podcast.